Up until now, we've been allowing this image's sort of intrinsic aspect ratio to control how tall and how wide it is in the browser. But say we wanted to give this image a very specific height and a specific width. How can we pull that off without introducing any sort of scaling artifacts? Let's explore it. So I'm going to add some classes to this image to sort of force it to be a different size. So why don't we give it a height of, say, like 64, just a value from Tailwind spacing scale, and a width of full, just to force it to a specific size. Okay, so now you can see that the image is a lot taller and it's sort of stretched out. We can sort of exaggerate this effect by maybe making it really short, like H16. And now you can see it's really distorted as it's stretched really wide. Let's set this back to something a little bit more reasonable so we can sort of see the effect of what we're about to do. Okay, so at H32, this is still pretty distorted, but we can kind of see pretty clearly what's going on at least. So if we want to tell the browser how exactly to render this image, given this sort of fixed shape that it needs to render it in, we can do so using the object fit CSS property. And so it exposes that property through a bunch of object fit utilities. For example, we could do object contain, and this will tell the browser to make sure that it can show the full image without any scaling, constraining it to whatever the sort of overall shape is that we're trying to fit it in. Similarly, we can use object cover, which says cover the entire area, but still don't distort the image. Object cover is the one I find myself needing most often, and it's the one that we'd want to use in this case. Now, by default, object cover is going to center the contents of the image in the area that we're trying to display it, but we can also customize that if we'd like to using the object position utilities. So right now the default is object center. So this is just going to look exactly like it did before. But if we wanted to anchor this to the top, we could say object top, and now it's always going to show the top of the image and cut off the bottom. Similarly, we can do object bottom, which will always show the bottom and cut off the top. We can also do stuff like object left or object right, but because of how this image is being cropped in this particular case, we're not actually going to see those have any effect. Let's delete this utility since we don't actually need it and set the height back to something reasonable, maybe something like H48. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good shape for this image. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that IE11 does not support object fit or object position. So if you need to support anything other than evergreen browsers, you might need to use a different solution. The best solution that works with IE11 in my experience is to use a background image instead of a regular image. So what we could do is we could add a div here, and we could give this div the same classes that we have on the image in terms of the actual dimensions. So we can say H48, and it's going to be width full by default, so we don't need to set that. And then we need to actually assign the background image as an inline style. So I'm just going to say, using Vue's sort of inline style syntax, that for style, we want the background image to be a URL pointing at property.image URL. And with any luck, if we've done this correctly, we should see two images. Yeah, and we do. So now we can control sort of the positioning of this background image using similar utilities as we did for the regular image. But this time, instead of object cover, we're going to use BG cover to tell Tailwind to give the background image a size of cover. We're also going to want to center this since the default background position is not center. And now if we didn't have this image, you see we have the exact same result, but now we're able to support IE11. Now, if you don't need to support IE11, I definitely recommend using an image tag with object fit and object position because it is a little bit more accessible. Screen readers will be able to see that there's actually an image here, whereas they're not going to know about some background image that you're setting on a div. So whenever possible, use an image tag, but if you can't, this background image approach will also work in a pinch.